All right, here we go. Sunday, February 18th. Welcome back to That Change Show. I'm your host, Jason Little. Today I'm going to be chatting about using sentiment analysis in AI. So I did have a podcast scheduled for this morning, but the person I was supposed to be hosting wasn't able to make it today. So I had to call an audible. So what I thought I would do is do something with a little more visuals. So if you're listening to this in your podcast listener thingamajiggy, you can go to leanchange.tv or you can go to the Lean Change YouTube channel. Both links you can find in the show notes, and you can check out some of the visuals. I'll do my best to describe them as we're going along. So what I'm going to do for this video is talk about different approaches you can take for collecting insights from customers, from employees. Typically, this is going to be in a change management context. So let's just say you're doing some type of readiness assessment, some analysis, you want to get feedback on how the change is going. Surveys are pretty common. And what I see with surveys is a lot of the times we'll overly simplify them to make it easier to analyze the data. So we'll ask things like, from a scale from 0 to 5, how much do you agree with this statement? We might ask more binary related questions or things like that because we can get nice fancy charts out of there. So we can go, 73% of the people agree with this change as rated by most people put anywhere from agree to strongly agree in this. So what AI is going to allow us to do is to collect much, much deeper insights for everything from readiness assessments to business readiness to even project information. So if you've got a bunch of status reports and a bunch of other data collected from a variety of sources, you can actually do much, much, much better analysis on that stuff. And you might not even have to worry about just doing periodic surveys. You can collect that stuff basically from anywhere. You can dump in a bunch of emails, you can dump in a bunch of tweets, or if you're using any kind of internal social media site or SharePoint or whatever it is that you're using, it's pretty cool because AI doesn't care where the data comes from. So you're going to be more likely to get better insights that are going to help you figure out how to move the change forward. I'm not going to get into a lot about data privacy and ethics because obviously that's going to be a big problem, especially if you're talking about collecting insights from email. So I'm going to do probably another show on ethics later on down the road, but let's get into this one. So what I'm going to do for this one, I'm going to use the State of AI and Change Management survey for some of the examples. I'll do that a little bit later in the chat. And again, if you're listening to this in your podcast listener thingy, I'll describe the prompts that I'm putting in and how it's responding. But first, let's talk a little bit about the term sentiment analysis. Now, from what I see mostly on, LinkedIn and forums and conversations and stuff, sentiment analysis typically gets represented as positive, neutral, negative. I want to do a sentiment analysis on this text, and we oversimplify our ask of AI to basically say, who agrees, who disagrees, who's somewhere in the middle. There's a whole bunch of different techniques that you can use for sentiment analysis. I'm going to do a little quick definition of the 9 main ones and a little bit of the differences between the two, because the interesting thing with AI is if you just asked it, for example, can you do a sentiment analysis on blah, and you paste in a bunch of text, it is going to default to a certain model and it's going to give you insights. So basically, yes, it is going to do the analysis, but it's going to do what you ask of it. Sometimes it might not be able to analyze the data. It might ask you some questions to be able to prepare your data and stuff like that. But if you want to get a bit of deeper analysis, you can use one of these 9 techniques. Okay, so instead of describing these myself, I've invited a friend of mine from Australia, Phoebe, to describe this stuff for me. So how's it going today, Phoebe?
I'm doing great today. Although I'm a little disappointed Volkanovski lost the title last night.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, it was a good fight. Maybe he came back a little bit too soon, but he's still one of the greatest.
Thanks, I appreciate that.
Yeah, no problem. I think he's going to get a rematch anyway, probably in Spain, which would actually be pretty cool. But anyway, the reason why I asked you here today was to explain in a really simple way the different types of sentiment analysis that people can do on text. So could you take all the major ones and just maybe explain it in, I don't know, a couple of sentences for each?
Certainly, that sounds like a cracking idea. I'll give it a go. Artificial intelligence is revolutionizing how we understand our customers and employees. In the past, we would rely on rating scales, agree to disagree sliders, and simplified questions because it was easier to see a chart about the percentage of people who strongly disagree versus those that don't. In a world teeming with data, unlocking the nuanced emotions behind texts is key to truly grasping what people want and need. From tweets to reviews, survey responses to casual chats, every word shared online or in the workplace carries a wealth of information. But how do we decode these vast textual landscapes to discern true feelings and opinions? Enter AI and its groundbreaking tools, making sense of sentiments at an unprecedented scale. In this explainer video, we'll unravel the mysteries of text preprocessing, keyword density analysis, bag of words, TF-IDF, sentiment lexicons, machine learning models, transfer learning with pre-trained models, VADER and TextBlob. Each technique, a unique lens magnifying the whispers and shouts of human emotions hidden within texts. Don't worry if you don't know what those terms are. Keep watching and we'll explain its simple terms. When we're done, you'll be able to give ChatGPT your data and ask it to use one of these 9 techniques. Text pre-processing. This is like cleaning up and organizing a messy room before you start decorating. It involves getting the text ready for analysis by removing unnecessary words, correcting spelling, and breaking the text into smaller parts. Keyword density analysis. Imagine you're looking for clues in a detective story by noting how often certain words appear. This technique counts how frequently specific words related to feelings or opinions show up in the text, giving a basic idea of the overall sentiment. Bag of words, BO. Think of it as making a grocery list from recipes. You list all the unique ingredients, words you need, without worrying about the order they appear in the recipe, text. This helps in understanding which words are common and might be important. TF-IDF, term frequency, inverse document frequency. This is like deciding the importance of an ingredient based on how often it's used in a recipe and how unique it is across all recipes. It helps figure out which words are not only common, but also uniquely significant to certain texts. Sentiment Lexicons. Imagine you have a dictionary where every word is tagged with a mood label: happy, sad, angry. This method uses such a dictionary to scan the text and determine the overall mood based on the words used. Machine learning models. This is akin to teaching a computer to recognize patterns in a pile of mixed-up socks by showing it examples of which socks match. Over time, the computer learns to sort new socks into pairs, positive, negative, neutral sentiments, on its own. Transfer learning with pre-trained models. Imagine if you could download a chef's cooking skills into your brain. Transfer learning lets a computer model do something similar, where it learns from a vast amount of data someone else collected, making it smarter at understanding text sentiment without starting from scratch. VADER. Think of VADER as a specialized tool for reading short messages, like tweets or reviews, and quickly deciding if the message sounds positive, negative, or neutral, taking into account slang, emoticons, and other internet-specific expressions. TextBlob. Picture a helpful assistant that reads through text and gives it a happiness score. TextBlob is easy to use and good for getting a quick sense of whether the text is generally positive, negative, or neutral. Remember, AI is only effective based on how you prompt it. Prepare it for what you want to accomplish with the analysis, who your audience is, the questions you've asked, and how you want the data broken down. And remember, ChatGPT remembers the context, so you can follow up with questions like, "Are you sure? Can you reanalyze that? Can you analyze that data using the bag of words approach?" There is no longer a need to take the easy way out with numerical rating scales. The possibilities are endless, and your creativity will be the most important factor for deeply understanding your customers and employees.
Oh, that was great. Oh, that was so awesome. Thanks very much.
You are most welcome.
I did notice one thing though. Your lip sync is a little bit off. Are is there some latency going on with your internet over there?
I know, but I think you were just too lazy to ask me to create a better lip-synced video.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so for now, this is a custom GPT. If you go to chat.openai.com, you will need to have a GPT Plus account to access this. We're going to be integrating this into the website anyway, and all of our research that we've been doing over the last 15 years. So this is the state of AI and change management and our ongoing surveys and random questions we've asked over time. So you can ask this a specific question about how many people responded to the AI survey. I think we're at about 41 or 2, I think, so far. And it should pick it out. It might take it a little bit to analyze it, but okay, so we've got 42. Now, if we're starting off with sentiment analysis, let's just start with the easy question. So I'm going to ask it, can you just do a sentiment analysis on the AI survey and just tell me the general sentiment? So let's see what this comes up with. By default, ChatGPT is going to default to the VADER mode, which is, you could call it a fancy keyword search. So it's going to rip out all of the, oh, no. So here's an interesting thing. If it messes up, it's going to try again, which is pretty cool. So I made some assumptions about the existence of comments column for the sentiment analysis, but it didn't align. So let me try this again. So now it's actually read the questions. So this is, if you remember chatting about the importance of cleaning up your room before you get started, this is a CSV output of the data. The column headers have the questions in it, and I just fed it the new data this morning. So it does need to take a look at that stuff first so it can understand it. So what I should have done is I should have asked it this. So now, if you're asking it, you have to ask it if it understands the data. So now it has the questions. Now I can basically do more deeper sentiment analysis on these types of questions. But let's just scroll up to the first section up here. Now, what I did up here, can you do a sentiment analysis on the AI survey only and tell me the sentiment? This is called zero-shot prompting. So this is basically you're giving ChatGPT an instruction to do something that it's never done before. So it's like if you had a brand new employee who was super duper smart and you said, go do this thing, it's never done it before, it's going to go try it and it's going to base it on its experience, which is why it said, it appears I made an assumption about, so it assumed there would be a comment column. Now, if I was doing something called few shot prompting, now I would do a question like this. I would say, tell me what questions were asked in the survey, or I'm going to upload a file or just text of my survey. Can you tell me whether or not you understand it and what other questions you have? That's few shot prompting. So you're going to train it with a little bit of information before you get started. So if I go back to the zero shot prompt here and highlight this, so the survey indicates general positive sentiment towards AI with a polarity score of approximately 0.18. So it says that the tone is slightly positive, the subjectivity score is around 0.48, meaning that there is a moderate level of subjectivity in the responses. So it does also recognize that there's personal opinions and feelings in the responses, and there's also a significant amount of objective discussion. So not too terribly useful, but now it knows the questions. If I asked it again, consider the question about how people are confused by AI only, and can you analyze those responses and summarize them into key themes or categories? So it should only take those questions. The really good thing about doing this kind of analysis is you can ask the AI, I'm not sure that's correct, because you're going to know, generally speaking, what type of data, questions, and insights you want to get out of it. So you can say, I'm not entirely sure that's correct. Can you try again? So now it's breaking things down into themes or categories. So if you're listening to this, the main themes were ethics and integration with people, and what is AI's role in change management, risk and the future of AI, application and policies, tools, and access. So it's plunking out the major themes from what are people confused about. Now, the interesting thing, again, with the sentiment analysis is this is just from experience. When you ask people questions in a survey, sometimes their brain just kind of goes down a dirt road and they put in data that's not really related to the question. So the good thing with this is I can ask it now to create that same theme, but across all of the different types of questions. But what I want to focus on here is breaking things down, because, you know, some of the things that we're talking about with sentiment analysis is at scale. So what I did with this question was I asked people about their years of experience and basically what community they came from, because I wanted to see if there was a difference in perception between agile coaches, change managers, HR people, or other. I also asked about technical aptitudes, so not technical at all from, you know, still developing and writing code. So now I can slice and dice these types of things by asking it questions like, is there a difference in sentiment between experienced people with 10 or more years of experience compared to people with less than 10 years of experience? And when I asked this question on the survey, it wasn't a range. It was basically just use a slider from 0 to 20. And then assuming if it's 20, then obviously it would be 20 or more years. So now it's using something called train of thought response, and it's telling me what it's going to do. So it says the years of experience in change management among the respondents range from 2 to 20 years. So it makes it straightforward to categorize these answers. So now it is giving me the answers. So experienced respondents, 10 or more, the sentiment has a polarity of 0.12, indicating a slightly positive tone in their skepticism. The subjectivity score is around 0.46. And when it is less experienced change agents, the sentiment is more positive with a polarity of 0.2 and more subjective with the subjectivity score of 0.6. Now, suppose you don't know what those mean, and I'm not going to pretend to be a statistical expert. So I'm going to ask it, and I'm going to say, what does the polarity score mean? So now it's telling me, it says the polarity score is a numerical value ranging from -1 to +1, and it's the overall sentiment. So negative values is basically the text is expressing a negative sentiment. The closer the score is to -1, the more negative it is. 0 is neutral, positive is 0 to 1. So that's pretty interesting. So you can see 0.12 is a lot closer to 0 than 0.2. So that's how it's telling me that less experienced people have a more positive view of what AI is. And now I can also ask it the subjectivity score, which I am assuming is going to be the same. So now it's going to respond with 0 indicates the text is very objective with no opinion or emotion, and 1 is very subjective. So it's basically a 0 to 1 scale. So you can see that the answer it had above, the subjectivity score was 0.46 for experienced people and 0.6 for people with less experience. Now, because it stays in context, if I wanted to see if there was a difference between communities now, so I can say, can you do the same analysis again, but instead of analyzing it by experience, can you break it down by community? So now it's telling me, again, train of thought response, the respondents belong to 3 distinct communities, Agile, Change Management, and Other. Now, I did ask for HR and stuff like that, but just from memory, I don't think anybody obviously answered that they identify or they're more closely aligned with the HR community. Otherwise, it would have had that. So now it's spitting out the polarity and the subjectivity per community. Now, my assumption going into this was Agile people would be more accepting of AI because, generally speaking, they are more likely to adopt early technologies. Now, there might be some bias because we're kind of in the corporate Me Tooism stage or phase of Agile, which is people are getting brought into Agile nowadays through an enterprise lens or through scaling frameworks and certifications and things like that. So there might be a little bit of bias in it would be interesting if I asked people, when did you get involved in the Agile community? Because the people who were involved very early on tend to be more on the innovative curve and more early adopters. Change management in general terms is generally more conservative. and the polarity that it came up with here. So the positive sentiment of Agile was 0.22, and change management 0.11, and other community 0.05, so slightly positive. And other could be obviously just about anything. Now the subjectivity, Agile community was 0.51 and change management was 0.45. So the summary that it comes up with, obviously you can see it on the screen, but if you're listening in your podcast listener thingy, the Agile community has the most positive sentiment towards AI in change management. Now, I want to do the exact same thing, but now this is the last one I'm going to do because I think you get the point of what you can do here. But I want to break it down by technical level. So while it's thinking about this, the reason why I wanted to slice and dice these this way, because now you can sort of figure out what do you want to do with those insights. So if you were doing an analysis like this in your organization for a transformation or a change or whatever it is, and you could, I did this the hard way once, I don't know, 12 years ago or something like that, where we had data from probably 600 people. We sliced it by department, and we basically wanted to see what was the thought, what was the readiness level, if you want to call it that, of the change from the perspective of different departments. And we found out, I've really got to dig into the memory archives for this one. But there were some groups that were much, much, much more accepting of the Agile transformation that we were working on than other groups. Now, it wasn't a case of, we need to go to those other groups who rated a low score and we need to overcome the resistance and focus on them. What I used that for was, let's forget about those guys. Let's go with the people that are motivated and want to do this stuff. Let's latch on to them. Let's figure out how to help them as much as they need. And then now they're going to be the movers. They're going to be the people who help the other people who are not ready for this yet come along for the ride. Because those movers or innovators or early adopters, however you want to call it, those are the people who are most likely to want to be coached. And we certainly did have teams in that organization that said, give us everything, we're ready for coaching. We're ready to try stuff out. We're ready to take on the extra work because, everybody's got project schedules to meet and stuff like that. And we didn't bother with the teams that, from the survey didn't really want any help. Eventually they came around. So now let's take a look at the exact same analysis. And my assumption here was, I have to think about what my assumption was. It's on the screen and I've already seen it, so I'm going to try to not let that sway my decision. I thought people who were more technical would be more excited about it. And the reason I say that is there's so many... Sit with a developer and talk with a developer about all the manual things you do, and they can probably automate or use AI for stuff and make your lives dramatically easier. And whenever I've done that with people, they get blown away. So I do this in my startup where I put this in the Ultimate Guide to Prompting book. The founder of the startup that I worked for, that I'm still working for, wanted to organize a conference. And I basically did this with ChatGPT. In about 10 minutes, we went from a big flip chart of topics people wanted to talk about from an autism meeting that she had done to a full schedule with suggested profiles for speakers to get. And she was totally blown away because this sticky had been sitting in our office, this gigantic sticky wall, for probably a year and a bit. And every time we would go by and we would look at it, we're like, one of these days, we're going to look at that and we're going to try to make sense of it and organize a conference. And now once she saw how easy it was to do this, it just like the possibilities in her mind just completely exploded. So I thought the same thing would happen here. The technical people would be more likely to know how much AI can help them in change. Again, because these technical people, they're probably agile coaches or technical coaches, former developers, stuff like that. And I thought the people who were less technical would be like, oh, whatever, it's just a fancy search engine. So let's see what the sentiment is. Currently developing things was the question for people who are highly technical. They had a 0.18 positivity sentiment. And people who were not technical at all had a negative 0.16. So, woohoo, hypothesis validated, I guess. People who did basic things, so basically everybody had a positive sentiment except for people who were not technical, and they had very low subjectivity scores. So this data is very, very useful because I'm going to go out on a limb and say most change people are not technical if they're not coming from an agile or development background. And it might be difficult to see exactly how AI can help. That said, the change people have more deep knowledge and experience with change compared to agile people. And don't get mad about this and don't leave angry comments. This is just wide sweeping generalizations because I've been involved in both communities for 15 years, and those are just the patterns that I see. Agile folks tend to like the shiny things faster, and they want to always be innovating, and change people tend to take more of a wait and see kind of approach and maybe a more conservative approach. So both of those things are going to be important when it comes to getting thrown into AI projects. All right, so let's get into the wrap up. So now that we've done a few things with the sentiment analysis, if one of those other 9 techniques sounded interesting to get you more insights, you can specifically ask it. You can say, can you reanalyze that using the TF-IDF approach? It's going to spit out a list of it's term frequency basically is what that one is. So it's going to pluck out the number of times those terms were found in whatever responses you're analyzing. Now that might not be too terribly useful. If you were using this, for product development, for example, and you put feature names in there, that might be more useful because now you can start to see what features are people talking about, which would be pretty interesting. So if there were specific parameters about the change that had those kind of keywords, you could use that analysis on it as well, which would be pretty cool. But I think the lesson here is we don't have to rely on single shot surveys, which is every quarter we do an employee feedback survey. You can do ongoing ones because now you can also ask AI to say, tell me what's changed over the last year. Can you break down the responses month by month and spit that out in a fancy chart? So you can feed it random questions basically anytime. So you don't have to get the questions right. And I see this a lot with change, especially when you're talking about enterprise change. You get these surveys that take you 20 minutes to fill out. And by the end, the employees are just like, I don't care. I just want this thing over so I can get back to my cat videos on Instagram. So you don't have to rely on those gigantic surveys at the beginning. You can take data and you can add it at any point in time, which is really awesome. So I hope you enjoyed this video. Drop a comment below if you've got questions. Next week, I am going to be bringing Ken Rickard back. We're going to be chatting about are enterprises now ready for agile transformation? And this is based on the stuff that we're seeing about VADER, what they're doing. So the Reader's Digest version is they're getting rid of their management layer, flattening the organization, and using a different approach for how they're doing transformation, which in a company like that is pretty impressive. And the hypothesis for the chat in the next episode is this the first domino that needs to fall for enterprises to really get what agile transformation is all about? So remember to hit like and subscribe on our YouTube channel or in your podcast listener thingy, and I will see you next week. Thanks for watching.